In April 2025, President Donald Trump, back in the Oval Office for his second term, stunned the world with sweeping new tariffs on nearly all imported goods. The announcement came suddenly, catching both allies and rivals off guard, and marked one of the most aggressive moves in modern U.S. trade policy. Dubbed the tariff shock, the plan imposed a baseline 10% tariff on almost every product from overseas, with China hit by a staggering 34% and the EU by 20%. The sweeping measures targeted everything from electronics and clothing to cars and raw materials, sending shockwaves through global supply chains. Wall Street's reaction was instant and brutal. The S&P 500 dropped nearly 5%, the Nasdaq 6%, and the Dow shed thousands of points in hours. Traders scrambled to make sense of the new reality, as panic selling swept through the markets and volatility spiked to levels not seen in years. Investors saw the move as reckless, fearing it could tip the global economy into recession. Many worried that higher prices on imported goods would quickly filter down to consumers, squeezing household budgets and slowing spending. The policy's complexity was unprecedented. 57 countries faced new tariffs, and the de minimis loophole, allowing small, tax-free packages from China, was closed. Businesses scrambled to understand the new rules, as customs offices braced for a flood of paperwork and confusion at ports. E-commerce giants, built on global supply chains, were directly threatened. Companies like Amazon and Walmart faced immediate challenges, as their logistics networks and pricing models were thrown into chaos. Small businesses, too, felt the pain. Many relied on affordable imports to keep their shelves stocked and their prices competitive. Now they face tough choices: raise prices, cut costs, or risk going under. The shock on Wall Street quickly rippled worldwide, with economists warning the U.S. economy could shrink by 1% in the next quarter. International markets tumbled, and global leaders scrambled to respond, fearing a new era of protectionism. The president promised to make America strong, but the immediate result was panic, uncertainty, and a sense that the U.S. had declared a trade war on itself and the world. Protests erupted in major cities, and news outlets ran non-stop coverage of the unfolding crisis. Billions in value were wiped out in a single day. Retirement accounts, college funds, and savings for millions of Americans took a sudden hit, leaving families anxious about their financial futures. The financial system was rattled, and the world braced for the fallout. Bankers and policymakers met behind closed doors, searching for ways to contain the damage and restore confidence. America's bold gamble had just begun, and the consequences, intended and unintended, were only starting to unfold. What are tariffs? You've probably heard the word tossed around in news headlines, especially when politicians talk about trade wars or protecting American jobs. But what does it actually mean, and why does it matter to you? Simply put, tariffs are taxes placed on goods that are brought into a country from abroad. When a product crosses the border, the government charges a fee, an import tax, that gets added to the cost of that item. For example, if you buy a TV made in South Korea and there's a 25% tariff, the importer has to pay that extra fee. Usually that cost doesn't just disappear, it gets passed on to you, the shopper, so you end up paying more at the store for the same product. The main idea behind tariffs is to make imported goods more expensive so that products made in the US look like a better deal. This is supposed to help American companies compete and keep local factories busy. President Trump's big economic gamble was to use tariffs as a tool to bring manufacturing jobs back to the US. By making imports less attractive, he hoped companies would choose to build their products here, creating more jobs for American workers and boosting the economy. Take cars, for instance. If the US puts a 20% tariff on vehicles from the European Union, a German Volkswagen suddenly costs a lot more. That price hike might push buyers to consider American-made Fords or Chevrolets instead, supporting local car makers. The hope was clear: more US factories, more jobs, and less dependence on countries like China for the things Americans use every day. In theory, this could mean a stronger, more self-sufficient economy. But tariffs come with big risks. Other countries often fight back by putting their own tariffs on American goods, making it harder for US companies to sell products overseas. This can hurt farmers, manufacturers, and small businesses that rely on exports. Plus, tariffs can drive up prices for everyone. When companies pay more to import parts or products, those costs usually get passed down to consumers, acting like a hidden tax on everyday items, from groceries to electronics. The so-called tariff shock was a high-stakes bet. Would bringing jobs back to America and boosting local industries be worth the pain of higher prices and the risk of global trade tensions? Or would it backfire, hurting families and businesses in the process? The answer, as it turned out, was far from clear, and the debate over tariffs continues to shape America's economic future. The world's response was swift and fierce. EU leaders condemned the tariffs, threatening countermeasures against iconic US exports and tech giants. China promised tit-for-tat retaliation, likely targeting American agriculture and industry. Canada slapped 25% tariffs on US cars and trucks, signaling a deep fracture in North American relations. Even close allies like Australia called the move illogical. The World Trade Organization warned global trade could shrink by 1% in 2025. American companies now faced higher import costs and the threat of heavy taxes on their exports. The global trade order was unraveling, and US businesses were caught in the crossfire. No company was hit harder than Amazon. As the world's largest online retailer, Amazon had built its empire on efficiency, speed, and a vast network of global suppliers. But when new tariffs and trade restrictions hit, the very foundation of its business was shaken. Its business model, built on global supply chains and low-cost imports, was under siege. Every package, every product, and every delivery suddenly became more expensive and complicated to manage. Nearly half of Amazon's third-party sellers are based in China, and the end of the de minimis loophole meant their costs would soar. Sellers who once relied on cheap, fast shipping now faced new hurdles, threatening their ability to compete. Amazon faced a choice: absorb the tariffs and lose profits, or pass costs to customers and risk backlash. Executives debated late into the night, weighing the risks of alienating loyal shoppers against the threat of shrinking margins. The tariffs also threw Amazon's logistics into chaos, making inventory management and delivery timelines unpredictable. Warehouses struggled to keep up, and delays rippled through the entire system. The company was squeezed between a protectionist White House and angry trading partners threatening digital taxes. Political pressure mounted from all sides, leaving Amazon with few easy options. Amazon became a prime target for foreign retaliation and domestic pressure. Headlines questioned its practices and protesters demanded change, putting the company in the global spotlight. The company's global operations were at risk, and every decision carried massive consequences. Each move was scrutinized by investors, governments, and customers alike. The seamless, low-cost shopping experience customers expected was suddenly in jeopardy. Shoppers faced higher prices, longer waits, and fewer choices, eroding the trust Amazon had spent years building. Amazon's future in the US and as a global leader was on the line. The company's response would shape not just its own destiny, but the future of e-commerce worldwide. The stakes had never been higher, and every decision would echo across the industry for years to come. Inside Amazon, executives floated a bold idea: show customers the exact tariff cost at checkout. Includes $3.40 Trump tariff. The plan aimed to shift blame for price hikes onto the government. When news leaked, the White House erupted, calling it a political attack. President Trump personally called Jeff Bezos. Details remain secret, but the outcome was clear. Trump declared Bezos had solved the problem, and Amazon quickly announced the plan was off the table. Officially, Amazon said the decision wasn't due to White House pressure. Few believed it. The showdown ended with Amazon backing down, forced to manage the crisis quietly. The message challenged the administration and expect swift retribution. The tariff crisis forced Amazon's hand. The company concluded that the US, under America First, was no longer a stable base for a global business. In a stunning move, Amazon announced it would relocate its global headquarters outside the US. The new HQ would be in a country more aligned with free trade, while North American operations would remain in Virginia. The decision was a direct response to political risk and economic disruption. Amazon sought stability, open markets, and protection from US policy swings. The move signaled a seismic shift. America's most innovative company no longer saw the US as its best home. The consequences for the US economy and its global reputation would be profound. Amazon's exit was the climax of a long feud between Trump and Bezos. Trump had attacked Amazon for taxes, postal rates, and market power, often conflating the company with Bezos's Washington Post. The rivalry was personal and public, with lawsuits and political jabs on both sides. Even Bezos' attendance at Trump's 2025 inauguration couldn't thaw relations. The tariff shock and the infamous phone call ended any hope of peace. Trump's nationalist agenda clashed with Amazon's global model. The headquarters move was both a business decision and a symbolic break. Bezos had endured years of attacks, but tariffs struck at Amazon's core. The company's departure was a declaration of independence from Washington's political drama. The drama in Washington hits home for everyone. Analysts warned tariffs could cost the average U.S. household up to $2,100 more per year. Prices on groceries, beer, cars, and electronics all rose. The end of the de minimis loophole meant no more ultra-cheap goods from China. Platforms like Shein, Temu, and Amazon hiked prices. The era of endless choice and low prices was over. Job impacts were murkier. Some companies halted production, leading to layoffs, while others faced plummeting stock prices. Amazon's HQ move risked draining top jobs and talent from the U.S. The promise of bringing jobs home collided with the reality of jobs and investment leaving instead. American workers and consumers bore the brunt of the fallout. The new trade war was personal and costly. Amazon's move was more than a business decision. It was a turning point for globalization. For decades, the US was the natural home for global giants. No longer. If Amazon could leave, other multinationals might follow, taking jobs and investment with them. America risked losing its status as the world's business hub. The America First agenda could leave America isolated. For consumers, this meant higher prices, less choice, and a fractured world of competing trade blocs. The era of hyper-globalization was ending, replaced by economic walls. Amazon's exodus was a warning. Prosperity depends on openness, not isolation. The shockwaves would be felt for years to come.